themselves to you. We like to do that just so you see different people throughout the building. It is videotaping this. This will go on our Inform Montessori blog. Has everyone been to that yet? Some of you. So if you go to our website, shinyminds.com, and hit current families, and then you'll go to the next page that says where our blog is. And it's called Inform Montessori. There's a lot of really important things. All of our staff contribute to that every year. Every month there's at least something up there, sometimes more so. And we'll videotape certain workshops, so don't be shy. Please make sure you still ask your questions and things tonight. Welcome and thanks for being here. Let's figure out first, go ahead Evan, and see which staff members are here. You want to start?
Yeah, I'm Kelly. I work up front in Kukula. I take care of the finances, payroll, HR, all that stuff.
And her right hand, left hand.
Yeah, Prerna, she went back to India in July. So she works remotely for us and she takes care of all the student records.
So if you ever have, you've seen things about Prerna, she is accessible to you. So she does a lot of the things with our fax program as well. And anytime that you need information about extended learning enrollment, you can go to her as well. So she's accessible.
I'm Brandy. I work at the Curb Desk, and my main role is health services. I also support Curb Desk, so I answer the phone. For health services, I follow and implement the health plans, daily medications, first aid. So if your learner ends up with an injury or something, they'll come see me. If your learner has like asthma or diabetes or food allergies or anything like that, we'll write up a health plan for them, and then we implement that with the teachers to make sure that that plan is followed and that your learners are safe.
And also at the Curb Desk starting on Monday is...
My name is Evan Stoner. I was a former student at Community Montessori. I'm a current college student at U of L. I'll be starting on Monday at the Curb Desk, so excited to come back to the family and get started on Monday.
Awesome.
I'm Megan, and I'm a co-teacher in
Megan was here before, 6-9 level, now she's in the 36 level of IMAP.
I'm Sally. I'm a co-teacher in Rainforest with Katie Keller.
Sally just returned back from, is it Connecticut? I say a different state every time I talk to you.
Training in Connecticut.
Montessori training, and so she was there for how many weeks?
8 weeks.
8 weeks in the summer. So Quincy, who's in the studio one door over, was also there, and so it's a huge commitment to be a Montessori teacher, and we're really thankful to have so many committed members.
I'm Caitlin. I'm a teen developmental specialist, and I'm located over in Tranquility, which is right over there.
I'm Andrew. I'm a co-teacher with Alan and Typhoon. Caitlin and I are also supporting a theater enrichment after school on Wednesdays for 9 to 12-year-olds and Islanders.
Plug.
They're going to put on their full-scale musical, doing music, dance, all that stuff themselves. So if you've got a kiddo in that age range, talk to this actor for sure.
My name is Jen Spicer. I am a co-teacher in Diamond Studio, which is 9 to 12. This is my first year teaching, but not my first year affiliated with the school. I have 2 learners here, one in Tundra this year and one in Diamond this year.
She was a super sub for many years.
Yeah.
I got in a lot of trouble because we hired her.
So I went from where all of you are sitting to on the PIP council, and then went to subbing, and now I'm in this role. Yeah, thanks.
Hi, I'm Mary Margaret, and I am a co-teacher in Trapezoid in early education, 3 to 6-year-olds. This is my first year teaching, and I'm new to Montessori, but I'm excited, and I'm starting my certification this fall.
Hi, I'm Julie. I am a co-teacher in Amethyst, which is 9 to 12, and I am a new parent as well. I have a daughter in Oregon and a son in the nursery. Excited to be here.
These are some of our new staff that came and joined us tonight. So I wanted to let you know about a community event that's coming up. We haven't really even communicated this much to our family base. We're still finalizing which theater space we're going to be in IUS Oval Center. We think it's going to be September 19th. Who's heard of Inside Montessori? of you have. Okay. Let's go ahead. Is it almost 5 minutes? Okay. Let's read this first, and then I want to share you a little trailer about it, because I think it's a good way for us to start our conversation. We have a couple of you that would be interested in reading each paragraph. See, it brings you back to your school days. Thank you.
Inside Montessori is a documentary film and library of short videos that reframe the national education conversation toward creating learning environments that allow children to achieve their full potential. The proven developmental and child-centered practices of Montessori education can support all children, regardless of background and learning style, in having the opportunities to flourish in learning and in life.
So we're going to minimize just a minute, and then we're going to just show this just a couple minutes trailer, because I think it's worth it. And, yeah.
I don't think that there is any more important job in a community than teaching our children. It is the only way to achieve lasting cultural change.
Unfortunately, in some of our educational environments, we don't give our young people opportunity to be who they can be.
What we need to do is to prepare our children to be able to face the unpredictable. Education is not about creating somebody ready to fit into a pre-organized position.
Education has to be about giving every developing brain its best shot. That's what Montessori does. And it's been doing this for over 100 years.
In a Montessori community, the children learn that every member of that community is equally valuable, that everybody brings something that nobody else has.
It doesn't matter if you're black or white, or if you're low income or high income. It meets a child where they are and gives them the freedom to express and be themselves in a classroom environment.
The child is not just creating himself, he is refashioning humanity. It is our responsibility to give the children that possibility to create a new world, to create new perspectives.
I don't know of any other system of education today than the Montessori one to optimize that sort of preparation for the future. To make clear that this is not just an alternative. I think it's an imperative.
So when you signed up, did you know you're going to be refashioning humanity? Now you've got a really big job to do now, but that's why we're here, right? So I just want you to think about, we're going to ask all of our families to bring a couple people to this event. Little did Marie Montessori know, 100 years plus after she started
Welcome to Montessori Education. I'm Justin
decided to go on to the next one.
and this is Montessori in 18
You
minutes.
just closed the whole thing out. Little did she know that it was going to have these surges all throughout. Like in the 60s, it came to the United States. There was a huge surge of Montessori education again. And now, even in the 2000s, we have Montessori surging all throughout the world. And it's really to the point that all of last year, I was meeting with people locally and regionally about starting Montessori training programs in our community, about having more Montessori training programs. We host a training program, more Montessori schools that want to open that often come to visit our school locally, regionally. It's a really powerful thing to see us constantly going back to something that had such a strong foundation over 100 years ago. So, and of course, people say, well, there's had to be changes, right? Technology. Well, there are always things that we learned that we didn't know before, but I'll tell you, the foundations are all very consistent. When Maria Montessori said children read before they write, she said that in the early 1900s, and Harvard came out and said it in the early 1990s. Everyone said, ooh, children read before they write. They weren't really talking about, reading words and writing words. They were talking about what Maria Montessori did with the Google alphabet. Harvard people were as well as she was 50 years later. So it's a powerful philosophy, and tonight we're just going to talk about some introductory things to get you on your best foot forward as you start the school year. Please, this is very informal conversation. At any time, interrupt or ask something. Try not to share too much about your child that's not dignified, right? Those are more private conversations. And so if you have specific conversation about your child, really the best places to do that is with your child's teacher. I'm available afterwards, though, for sure. But, you know, so for sure we want you to understand, come on in, no problem. Making sure that you know the big picture, where to go for what, how to get information, and to give you a little bit of taste of some of the things that you might want to delve into further this year. So these lovely people are some of our parent involvement partnerships. So we started the school in 1998. Parents were like, we should have an organization. And we started researching PTA and PTO and found that really wasn't consistent with what we were trying to build or grow. And so instead, we created our own, like we have throughout the building. Studios, developmental specialists, like, we have all this lingo. And so this parent involvement partnership was created in 1998 by a group of parents, and later it was developed a mission and a council and more ways. The number one goal was to get you involved in the school, to get you a member of the community, and not just about taking money from you or trying to get you to be on a fundraising committee. So I'm going to turn it over to Melissa, who's going to share some more information. She's our PIP council chair. Is that the right word? Always go president, chair, I'm not sure.
President, but whatever.
Okay, President Melissa Cole.
Hi, I'm Melissa. I'm going to let you two introduce yourselves.
I'm Cassie Johnston. I'm the treasurer for the PIP Council this year. This is my first year on the PIP Council, and I have a daughter in Ellipse. This is her last year in Ellipse, and then this is my second year in the school.
I'm Jen Redmond, and I'm going to be working with the studio coordinators. And I have a son who's been here since he was 3 1/2, and he's now in his second year in Ocean.
And my children are in high school. They've been here since kindergarten, so they don't know anything else, and they love it here. I have a daughter in Oak and a daughter in Sycamore, and you are all PIP members. We are just PIP Council. We organize fundraising and community building events. We're trying to set up an event for October, but that's still in the works. We're not sure if that'll happen, but our first official event is Book Fair, which is October, the week of the 21st through the 25th, and we will be open late on Child's Work Night, which is the Thursday of the 24th. We do other events. Our biggest event is Spring Celebration, which is in May. We have Winter Gifting coming up, which is our way of giving back to the teachers during the holiday times. It's what the teachers, way back when, decided was the best way for them to feel acknowledged during holiday times instead of, each family buying something individual for that teacher. They decided to provide us with a list of supplies or even jobs in the lower levels of items that they need and would like to have, and then we put up all these little snowflakes in the hallways that you can pull off and make a donation to your studios. We do fundraising. We do box tops right now, which is changing. It's going to be digital. You can download an app. They're going to exclusively change that in January to just the app, where you won't be clipping anymore and sending those in. But we will still take the flip box tops, I think, until the end of this year. The school year, so next May. Volunteer opportunities, we always are posting. We send out a monthly email. It's called the PIP Connection, and it'll have events that are coming up, ways you can volunteer. You can always just email us at pip@shiningminds if you have any questions. And I think that's pretty much it. We're always here if you have questions, and we'll point you in the right direction.
One of the neat things you started with the Studio 50. Can you talk about that? How studios can write PIP grants?
Oh, yes. All of the fundraising money that we bring in goes directly back to the school. So At the end of the year, when we figure out how much money we brought in fundraising, 70% of that money goes back directly to the school that pays for, it was paying for the expansion development program. And then the other 30% goes back into the studios through PIP grants. So,
which was like $3,000 last year?
Oh, it was like $5,000, and this year we have a little over $6,000. So we help pay for transportation costs for like when the teens, they're coming up in October, they're going to go on their camping trips, and we'll help them pay for their bus transportation. We've helped with production costs for, I mean, not cost, but something for production for theater. We helped with the archery program, and it's an enrichment, right? So we helped them get the supplies that they needed. We helped with the science lab for Sapphire, for their science table and science equipment. We've done a lot of stuff, so all that money goes back directly to you.
And oftentimes reduces the amount of money families pay for going out trips and other activities. So very cool. Thank you. Thank you, Pip. So this is the rest of us around the cupola area. So you met Kelly and Brandy. Prem is the one that's in India. Glenn, my counterpart, I'll talk about in a minute, kindly of course. And then Melissa is our expansion development coordinator. So I'll be sharing some information with her tonight. And Mike and John are both our environmental specialist staff that you'll see around the building as well. And Presley, who's met Presley? Oh, good. So, you know, a lot of times new families are like, can we go in and see Presley? Children are welcome to come in. Anytime the door's open, children are welcome to come in and see Presley. So he oftentimes, all throughout the day, has children up reading or working. And so he actually went through pet therapy training. He's our family pet, one of 4 family dogs. So let's talk a little bit about the history. So I think that's important to start there and to move forward. And so, you know, we started in 1998. Our daughters were, 6 months old and 3 years old when we first understood that there was this whole other philosophy that I never knew anything about. And my husband and I were watching a Montessori segment on like 60 Minutes in 1996, and we thought, how is it? We didn't know about Montessori education. How is that possible? I'm an educator. I went to school. My bachelor's was in secondary education. And so at the same time, there was a local school opening. There were several in Kentucky. I went to visit. I went back to my husband and said, Glenn, we have to send our child to a Montessori school. And we both struggled with, do we want to take them out of the community over to Louisville? And so how do we make a Montessori movement here? As we kept talking to other people, we found that the passion was, you know, not just with us, it was with others as well. And so we developed a nonprofit board of directors. And so I in turn went back and asked them to hire me as the director of the school. And I had 2 goals. One was to add an age level every year through high school and start with 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. And the second was to eventually be tuition free. Montessori education, as many of you know in this room, can be anywhere from $7,000 to $15,000 a year, which I think was a travesty and disrespect to what Marie Montessori's vision was. And so I went up and lobbied every year from 1996 to 2001 to the charter school law passed in Indiana. And I went back to the families in a room about this size with about this many people at the time and said, okay, here's the deal. So charter school law passed, here's the positive, tuition free being at the top. Here's the negative, standardized testing being at the top. And we talked through those pieces and said, yes, we thought it was the right thing to do. And so that's why you're here today. And for some of you, you're still paying tuition because you're in early ed, but soon you won't be. And so we have 600 children ages, about 620 right now, infant through high school. Our first graduating class was in 2011. And so our own daughters who went here from the time that they were 2.5 and 5 all the way through high school. Our oldest is now finishing up her last year as a PhD program at Notre Dame. And our youngest is just graduated from IU a year ago, gave a year to our newborn grand twins that were born. And so she went and gave my daughter and son-in-law a year to take care of them. And now it's going to save the world. So we are committed to this process. We know how it works. Our 2 children were very, very different. Oftentimes I'll hear families say, well, I think it's for this child, but not for this child. Marie Montessori never thought of a particular child. And so when I say it has to do with the family. And so when you came to tour, you heard us say that. We said it could be for every child, it's not for every family. And so make sure this is the right fit for you, in that process, because it is different. It's very different than what you see in the community. I mean, you can't be in this community without knowing that what we do is different. But what we do is also what makes so many people come to our community. And so it's really a powerful process. So who was Maria Montessori? Go back just a minute, Evan, sorry. I paused, making you think that I was ready, but I really had like 19 other things I wanted to say on this screen, but not really. Maria Montessori was one of the first women doctors in Italy in the early 1900s, and so when she told her dad that she was going to be a doctor, he said, no, you can't be a doctor. Women can be teachers and seamstresses and nurses. But she did it anyway, and that intense focus she made as a scientist is part of the seeds that developed into the Montessori philosophy. And so when you read some of her books, which by the way, I have a whole ton of them, I brought a series of you today. You can check them out from my space as well. You can just write a piece of paper and check them out and take them on. But her focus was on how do we watch what children need and do for them what's next for them, right? And give them what they need to help them to progress further. And so where at the same time she was creating this very thoughtful scientific approach to learning, we had others that were looking at young children as an empty vessel. And how do we fill that vessel, right? And she said, children have within them everything they need. And I'll have a teen parent come to me and say, okay, Algebra 2, show me where Algebra 2 is in my daughter or son, right? I'm like, it's in there. Our role as the adults is to prepare the environment. And so part of what I'm going to share with you is how we do that here, and how are some ways you can help that happen at home. So observe the child, do not intervene. This approach requires a lot of patience and discipline, but is absolutely necessary. For those observations, curate and prepare an environment best suited for his development, his developmental stage and interest. So what she is not saying is, when your child's running into the street, just watch them and see what they're going to do, right? And so sometimes Montessori method and philosophy gets misunderstood because it makes people feel like children just get to do what they want. And that's not what this is about. It's about us setting appropriate, when necessary, boundaries, but also making sure that the environment that is there for them is prepared for them, right? And so, I had a young child in my space today who, it was a struggle to be in a space that had little glass horses that he could reach. And so I knew this was not the prepared environment for him. So we did our best to try to prepare it for him as we were going through this process together. But at home, what you're doing is you're every day thinking, okay, when do I keep telling them not to touch X, Y, and Z? When do I move it out of the space that they're in, right? When do I help them to know what their boundaries are and that things can stay in the space? And when do I remove those things? And so those are the safety parameters of that. And then there's a whole lot of other things. Like most of you, probably if you have a young child, have a stool where they can get to the things that are appropriate for them to get to, whether that's brushing their teeth, whether that's a cabinet in the kitchen that is stocked with the fruits and vegetables and foods that they can eat by themselves and get to whenever they're hungry. And so we do the same things in this environment too. So raise your hands, early ed families, how many are here tonight? Okay, 3 to 6 to 9 families. Okay, 9 to 12. There you go, now you can raise your hands.
I guess I was not as well.
Great, 12 to 14. I know it's hard.
He just turned
12 to 14, okay, great. And 14 to 18. Okay, great. So look, we have a little bit from each environment here. And so my biggest task is to try to talk to all of you, in a way that makes sense for each one of your children. And so I won't do that perfectly at all times, but that's my goal tonight, is to try to help with that. So school should be an extension of home, and home should be an extension of school. What does that mean to you? Who's worried about that? Do you have any thoughts about what that means yet?
There should be consistency between the two environments.
Yeah. And that's hard. For some of us in the room, we're like, okay, I do this, this, and this. This is our beliefs at home. And you'll have to figure out when and if you make those adjustments or not. But the more that you do, the better your child will, number one, acclimate to this environment and or progress in this environment. It is different. You probably can't go into any other school in a 40-mile radius, 30-mile radius, that does not use praise to condition children to do what you want them to do. And we don't use praise to condition children. We don't use praise. We use encouragement. but we don't even say good job to children in our school. Why?
Growth mindset.
Growth mindset, okay, you want to expand on that?
This idea of like inner worth in children, and not like when you praise them for doing just anything, you praise what the work they put into it and not necessarily the action in itself. And then it teaches or encourages in children this idea of continual growth. You tell a kid they're smart, all they hear is I'm smart, and you kind of almost, what's the word I'm looking for, dampen their desire to grow that, and also teach them that they fit within just this.
Has anyone ever seen a 3 or 4-year-old child when you go, oh, look at that picture, that's beautiful, all of a sudden they stop drawing the picture? Yeah. Does it happen to anyone in the room? And then all of a sudden, every time they'll draw like 3 lines and say, look, Mommy, what do you think of this? Look, Dad, look, Aunt, right? Because they start to become conditioned to need that response in order for them to be happy with it. And so our goal is intrinsic motivation, not extrinsic. Praise is an extrinsic motivator. Encouraging and or just saying thank you, and letting them feel good about what they're doing instead of making us be the one that tells them they should be feeling good about it or not, right? Helps them to give them their own sense of security. When you look at what employers are saying about employees right now, has anyone watched any of that? They call the current employee group, especially, their youngest group, like they need to be told what to do, when to do it. And they need to be given praise or some kind of reward every time they finish something. They're like, what is going on? Why can't they just do what they're supposed to do? Well, in a sense, our culture somewhat has conditioned us to do that. And so we want young people to draw that picture, and if they go, oh, Mommy, look at what I drew, and I say, if they're excited, I'm mirroring their excitement. Look what you did, what'd you think? It was really hard to draw that tree. Oh, you drew roots this time, I see, So we have this very engaging, authentic conversation, but I'm not going to give them the gold star or tell them, well, that wasn't as pretty as your last one, right? Or when that teen comes up and they finish like 19 Algebra 2 problems and they're exhausted, you go, well, go back and look at 2 and 3. Those aren't right, So we try to help them to feel, their own intrinsic thoughts about that instead of us giving that to them. And so that doesn't mean that we don't ever have a conversation about best work. There's a time and a place for that. And that goes back to the last screen, which is about observation. Just like my spouse, Glenn, he comes home tired, and I say, well, did you do this? I can see on his face, he's done for the day. I'm like, did you do these 5 things I emailed you at 10 o'clock this morning? Right? How's that going to work out for me?
Well, I'm not good at it.
I got you. But yet, how often do we do that to our children? We can see they're done. We can see they're struggling, but sometimes we don't look. And then we start piling things on, and then they get frustrated, whether they're 3 or whether they're 13. It happens the same way. And so instead, that observation piece is super important for us to look first, really think about what's happening, always know that we can pause, give them a chance to really share what they wanted to say, instead of us going into the 19 things that I have in my mind that I need to get done right this minute. So, here's some way you can support this, some of the ways you can support this system. Model the behavior that you want to see. Whew, who's failed at that? And so, really there shouldn't be double standards. If we say, as a community, and I really encourage for families to have kind of community meetings and make parameters that you all agree to, and who's going to remember all the parameters the most? The children. So whatever you say, you have to make sure you can follow up with. So if we say, as a family, that we're not going to have electronics at dinner, and then I've got my electronic out at dinner, right? And they're like, Mommy, I'm working. Do you want to get paid? Do you want to have food on the table? Right? And then it becomes a double standard. And so now, if I have something I really need to do, and I say, I'm so sorry. This is a coworker. They need me right now. I'm going to step away from the dinner table. I hope everybody understands. We can talk about it in a minute, right? Now I'm showing the deepest respect I can to the family members in our family. Right? Instead of just, I'm the oldest, I get to make this decision. So we model the behavior we want to see. We really try to, if I don't want my child to scream at me, my oldest really taught me how to have developmental patience. because she shared exactly what her feelings were from the time she was 2.5. And it taught me skills that I did not have before then, right? And I had to figure out, like, you know, as a young parent, I was, you know, like, hey, you don't talk to me like that, right? I would go right at them with the same things that I didn't want her to say to me, right? And then I realized she started saying, you don't talk to me like that. I'm like, uh-oh, right? So, you know, it's really important that we think, and if we do fall short, which everyone in this room will at some point, that we just say, I fell short. And it's really hard when they're not being kind to you, you know, to say that, but it's really important. When we say, you know, I messed up, you know, I hope you give me another chance. And then we're humble. At the school, we work really hard, and sometimes we have older children, elementary or teens, that come to the school. They'll say, I'm saying, well, this thing happened. What do you think needs to happen now? Well, I'm going to get in trouble. It's the first phrase out of their mouth. Or the parent will say, did you get in trouble today? And we really encourage you to remove that phrase from your mind at all times, and your mouth, because it becomes a trigger for many children, especially a child that has had any kind of instance that has been negative somewhere else. And then as the adult, you say to them, did you get in trouble today? Just talk about the things. Don't label it, right? And so you can say, did you do anything today you weren't proud of? Because I have something to share with you that I'm not proud of today. Wow, that's powerful, right? When I say to them, you know, a staff member wasn't feeling well, and I kind of was, you know, I just kept asking for more things, and I realized she isn't feeling well, and I went too far, and it upset her. And I said to her, I'm sorry, I forgot you weren't feeling that well, and I was on my own motion. And so when we share with them our stuff, which all of us have every day, and then they know it's safe to share it with you, I'll tell you the number one thing that happens when children start feeling like they're going to get in trouble at home for things that happen at school is they start learning to hide it really well with all the people, with the adults here, with the adults at home. And so we don't want that, right? We want them to be really honest with us. We want them to learn to take responsibility. We want them to be accountable for their actions. And those things happen in an environment of trust, an environment that's safe to make mistakes and not feel like they're going to be punished. And people are like, really? My child bit another child. I'm going to punish them. I'm like, well, I hear you. But what if, instead of telling them that they're going to lose all the things until, you know, a week from now because of this incident, if you say, here's the deal, we're going to talk about this. This is going to happen. We're going to make some plans. We're going to do some role playing when we get home tonight. We're going to practice with your little brother, you know, like, and we make it real and natural to the situation instead of a punishment. And so you're still helping that child to figure it out differently. But you're also not saying, you know, like, they may not be able to do all the things they want to do because you're doing this other thing. But you're not saying, I'm taking away this whole thing because of this action. And so instead, we want to try to help them to figure out a new pathway of how they're going to handle their anger, their frustration, their feeling of inept to another situation. So does that make sense? Anyone have any questions or thoughts about any of that right now? So we talked about encouragement instead of praise, and you know, I just really encourage that you go back with your partner or people that help you raise your child and just have that conversation about, you know, how do we help a young child to, you know, some parents will say to me, well, they're never going to know what's right or wrong unless I tell them it's right or wrong, or they were good or they weren't good. And so we're encouraging you, if you want to be similar to us, that we believe children are inherently good at all times. Now, sometimes they make choices that none of us agree with, and so then we handle what the choice was. It doesn't change them from not being good people, right? But what children do, and if you ask them, or you have somebody that's not related to your family, ask them, when does your mommy think you're good? When I smile and I'm next to my baby brother. When do you think your mommy doesn't think you're good? Oftentimes they'll say, when, you know, I hit my baby brother, my mommy doesn't like me, you know. So they just hear the pieces and parts. And so it's just important for us to, you know, we observe, we talk to them about it. What did you think mommy just said when she got upset when you pinched, you know, so-and-so? You said you're mad at me. I actually didn't say I was mad at you, right? And so we talk through those pieces with them too. Purposeful and developmental independence. Sometimes parents hear independent, they're like, my teenager's independent enough. I don't want them to be more independent. Or my 3-year-old thinks they own the world. I don't want any more of that. Well, it's purposeful and developmental independence. You know, so if you want your teenager to drive at some point, you know, and most of us do for lots of reasons, then we have to do the work to help them to figure out how to manage the rules of the road. And so, you know, putting our head in the sand and say, well, you know, you've never done this or you've never done that, you can't do this, doesn't help that collaborative piece. Say, so here's the deal. We're going to practice this once a week. Whenever you decide to take your test, that's up to you. But we're going to keep practicing this. We're going to go to Charlestown State Park or whatever that process is. And your 3-year-old, you know, if you notice, oftentimes that younger child will struggle when they feel as if they've lost control over something. Maria Montessori, in my opinion, is a genius. And so each developmental stage wasn't just because she liked the number 3 or 6. It was because that's when we shift into a new plane of development. And so when that 3 to 6-year-old, it's really 0 to 6 is the plane, that 6-year-old starts to see their world differently. And they start to become more social. They get out of the world of self and now they enter that social period. So from 6 to 12, they're developing all those social experiences. So from 12 to 14, we're also taking risks in those social experiences. So we understand where those developmental stages come from and we help them to find independence within those stages of development. And so the more we can help them to find, you know, instead of, you know, I know our house was not beautiful when our children were young, but we tried every day to put out a couple of clothes that they could choose from. Now they can decide what they're wearing instead of me saying, okay, what about this? And they go, no, that's itchy. What about this? No, that, you know. And so now I've just got myself into a control battle. Instead of, you know, here are the clothes that you like to wear. You're going to put out 2 sets every night from these clothes that we've agreed on that are appropriate for the weather. And so now you can choose which one in the morning. And so when they say, you know, maybe that morning, I don't want either one of those. I want my Mickey Mouse shirt, which is, of course, the bottom that you can laundry. So, well, these are the choices you have today. Yeah, you may wear this one or this one. We just say it without emotion. We say it without being frustrated. Oh my gosh, we already had this conversation. You're only, you know, and now they start doing the same thing, right? We get elevated, they get elevated. And so instead, we try to stay really low and, yep, those are the options. I can carry them with you in the car, or you can put them on before you leave. We're leaving in 2 minutes, you know? And we just say that calmly and not say, I told you, if you would have done it, da-da-da-da-da. In most cases, and sometimes we have children come in pajamas, it's better at 3 to 6 than it is in the rest of the building, but it happens, you know? And it's just a part of, you know, nonchalant. Is you just say to the teacher, they weren't ready to get dressed, here are their clothes when they're ready to put them on. And I will guarantee you all those early ed teachers will be fine with that. Would you agree, Megan? Absolutely. Probably is going to happen this year. You know, so it's helping them to figure out the independence and then being really consistent with it. Yeah, so we talked about you needed to have a job before we looked for cars. Yeah, but I really found this car I really wanted to get. I want to go right now and get it. I know you really wanted to go, but we said that you had to go and find a job first. So do you want to look at jobs tonight? No, I want to go look at this car. I heard you. But we said that we were going to look at the jobs first. You had to find a job first before we start looking at cars. And so then we just don't get in a fight about it, you know. It is even better, we do this a lot in the school, is we write down what we agreed on. So okay, let's just write down what we agreed on about the car situation. So we said da-da-da-da-da, or we said these 3 people can come over once your room is clean, or whatever that is that we've decided together is the preference, right? That we write that down, put it on the refrigerator, and the child says, I'm going to have someone's over today. I'm like, I don't know that we've ever, I haven't seen that your room's clean. Is your room clean? No, but it's mostly clean. Well, let's see what the note said. And they go over and they go, I think it's clean enough. Read the note. I think it's fine. Read the note. It says I have to have all the clothes, da-da-da-da-da-da. You know, now it's not about me, it's about the note. And we use that a lot in the school, you know? We just write down what we agree on. Okay, I'm just going to keep this. And so if we have any questions about it later, we go back and look at it. And they come back and they haven't done the 2 other things. And like, what does it say? Oh yeah, the 2 other things. Self-regulation. Beside and with instead of for and to. I know it's late in the evening. Anyone got a phone on that? So if my child is trying to go downstairs to play, and we've already talked about it's time now to go upstairs, get ready for bed. If I just grab them and take them upstairs, is that self-regulation? Who's regulating? Me. If I want them to learn to self-regulate, I have to figure out what tools, what am I going to use to help that process. And so oftentimes you'll see in the school that we use our body. Yep, I know, yeah, I realize that you want to, yeah, I'm ashamed you want to come out here, but we already talked about that we're not going out here until, yeah, we're not going out here until you may choose something to work on, you may have snack, you know. And so, and that helps them to learn how to self-regulate instead of me, you know, bullying them. You ever thought that way? Right? You know, sometimes we start, they're like, well, I'm the parent, I get to do that. Well, that may be true. I'm not trying to judge your belief system, but we really work really hard in the school to not put our hands on children. We try to help them to self-regulate that behavior. Or we don't send them to in-school suspension or da-da-da-da-da. We try to help them to figure out what are they going to do right now. Our goal is to help them to find proactive ways. And so if I know that every night at 9:05 we have this fight about brushing the teeth, then we may put a new plan in place. So right after lunch, before we play our games, that's when we brush the teeth. Teeth don't have to be brushed like 5 minutes before they go to bed. They can be brushed after the last meal, right? So we can determine those processes. So, you know, it's trying to think outside the box, be creative. And so when you have that person, if you're co-parenting with somebody or have someone else in your life that helps with that, talk to them about that. Okay, help me figure this out. Here's what I'm observing. It's a pattern that happens every night. What can I do that makes that different? My 14-year-old that wants to play on the video game, we talked about it's only on the weekend, but they still ask every single night. And so it's trying to figure out like what happens right before. Okay, so it really is that dead time between 8 and 9 o'clock when they ask. So I go in at 7 o'clock and I say, I just want us to remind us of what we said about the video game, so we're on the same page. And so what were you planning to do tonight from that 8 to 9 period? You know, what was your goal? I guess I'm going to read a book, you know, whatever. Can we read it together? You know. And so trying to do the preemptive piece for that. There's a term that you see a lot, and you hear a lot. There's actually a book called The Conscious Parent by Dr. Shavali Sabari. But conscious parenting is just that. It's just really about observation, trying to see what's happening before. We're being scientists. We do this all day long at the school. We see this child that every single day, they don't turn in this thing that they're supposed to turn in. And so we have the same conversation. And each time we do that, each time we repeat the same activity, it's like the fly going in the window. You know, it's not going to change the behavior. We have to figure out what we can do before that to help that behavior to change. So if that means putting a Post-it note and putting a time on there, that might help. And so the goal is that we can do it collaboratively instead of us telling the child what we're going to do, you know. That's always the goal, but sometimes it becomes like, okay, we tried what we did together and now it's going to be this. And so we're going to do this for a while. But Dr. Shavali Sabari has a lot of videos as well that you can watch. This book, she has several books. This is The Conscious Parent. She also has one called The Awakened Family. Both really powerful books for you to check out if you'd like to as well. I always say start with what you can do well and consistently. Sometimes families leave this meeting or leave a conversation with a teacher and they go, okay, we're going to do all these things. And they come up with 9 things they're going to change. And I want to make everything perfect this year. And then we say we're going to do all these things and we really can only do one thing consistently, right? Because it was too much. So you start with the one. You only start with the thing that you can do consistently. Because the child learns you say something, but you don't do something, right? And so we're trying to help them to realize that what I say what I mean, and I mean what I say. And so I know, and we can validate feelings, and that is really important. You are really frustrated because you really wanted to do this thing with your friend tonight, and we had a plan to go out to dinner with family. Tonight we're going out to dinner with family. I'm sorry I didn't remind you of that this morning, and you had this thought about you wanting to ride your bike with your friend down the street. But that's what we're doing tonight. Because we talked about on Wednesday nights we go out to eat with family, right? So helping them to know that we'll always start what we can do well first. And part of that too is not saying, if I'm telling a child that this needs to happen now, So it is now time to go to bed. If I add the word okay, what is that doing to that sentence?
Asking a question.
Yeah, and what is that doing for the child?
Giving them a chance to give you an answer.
Yeah, and so we don't ever put okay or all right or is that okay with you or okay, you know. We don't do that unless we really give them a choice. And so we follow this, teachers in this room every day. You know, I'm like, especially a child I'm not used to being around, and I'll say okay, and they say no, not okay, and I'm like, new plan, okay. So I'm like, okay, so I gave you a choice, and now you don't want to do that. So let's sit and think about what's the next step that we can do to make sure that your body's safe, whatever those parameters are. And so really think, and so as a conscious parent, you think about what can I say that I mean. And that doesn't mean you have to be mean about it. You don't have to raise your voice. You don't have to give any look except neutral on your face. And just say what you mean, you know. You may play with our dog, but you can't play with the dog that's walking in the neighborhood. You know, it's not, we don't know that dog. It's not safe. You may play with your dog. Yep, you can play with your dog. You know, and you just keep repeating it. And I will tell you that your child will realize that you what you say what you mean. And the times where you feel like you got to say it 92 times, you might find that you're only doing it like 1 or 2 times now. Because they know that when you say that that's what's going to happen. Help your child to self-advocate. What does that mean to you? Use your words. Yeah. Does anyone know adults in this room? Or not in this room. Do any of you know adults that don't self-advocate? Right? And so, Magda Gerber, who is the influence of the infant toddler program at the top of the hill, believed that if we can help children, even in infancy and toddler, learn to self-advocate, that we could change the world, right? She believed that if we can do those pieces, that the mental health industry would start to lower itself from where we are right now. Because setting personal boundaries, and even when you see an infant up there who's not giving eye contact because it's not ready to have its diaper changed, it is self-advocating if they're listening. And that 2-year-old that's telling another child, do not touch my body, is setting personal boundaries and self-advocating. And that goes right into the 15-year-old, 17-year-old, right? And so it's really, really important that we help young people self-advocate. And I get it. There's some of us in this room that feel mother bear, father bearish. True? And that doesn't mean that you're not there to protect your child, but if we can help our child self-advocate and get their needs met, that's powerful, right? And so, you know, if your child's feeling like they're not getting a math lesson to help them to understand this math, then you can say, so what do you want to do about it? And they say, I don't want to go to that school anymore. Well, that's not an option, so what do you want to do about it right now? You know? And they say, why won't my teacher stop giving me lessons? I don't want you to talk about teacher. You can't, like, here's the deal. You brought this up 2 days this week. And so it's affecting you. And so I trust your teacher. I trust that they will listen to you and you can make a plan. So I can do one of 2 things. I can walk in with you tomorrow and let you talk to your teacher and let them know what you're concerned about. Or you can send an email to them and copy me so that we all know. Which would you like to do? I don't wish it. So if you're not going to choose, then we'll just go in tomorrow together, which is fine with me. I'm here for you. But I will stand beside you. And if they're like, I don't know what you want me to say, you whisper to them very slowly. You tell them about the matter. And then you hold. And you help them to know it is safe and comfortable. And the more they do it, the more they feel comfortable. It's that when they get to our age or get older, right, that they start feeling comfortable. And so we help them at 3, at 5, at 7, at 10, at 15, at 20. We help them to know that they have the ability to self-advocate for themselves. And set personal boundaries with others. Like, I don't have my Chromebook. Teens program has Chromebooks. Well, did you ask your Chromebook partner? No, they never listened to me. So what's your plan? What do you want to do about that? Nothing? Yeah, nothing's not an option. So what do you want to do? Do you want to talk to Alan or Emily or Andrew or Joey and ask them for help with talking to them? No, they're just going to be mad. You can do this. Your words mean something, and you can set personal boundaries with them. They need to hear us say that. They need to hear our stories of us going somewhere and someone not being kind to us and how we handle that successfully in a way that makes us feel empowered and have ownership in the situation instead of making us feel like a victim, right? And so anytime we can practice that with young people, super important. And show respect and care for others. You know, we also want to make sure that we're helping them to do that, that we are showing respect for them. When we fall short, we tell them we fell short, and we help them to show that respect for others. You know, not letting someone get away with something. So you're saying that their dad just died, you don't want to talk to them about their Chromebook, but you've been saying this for like 2 months. I think it's time, you know? And so we're helping them, like, I appreciate you respecting them, but it's affecting you. And so it's time for you now to say something about that. Thanks. So work at home and absence waivers, those are new words that you've probably heard. And so, you know, as a school that believes in, you know, that you are your child's first teacher, we entrust in you the ability to have times for you to work at home with your child or to do absence waivers. That can't be all the time, and if it becomes a problem, then we have to stop doing absence waivers, but in 99% of the cases, it works really effectively. And families will say, we're going on a trip, you know, mom has this out-of-town trip, dad and child and I were all going together, we're making a family trip of it, and so, you know, we're going to set up this absent waiver plan with the teacher, which might look like the child's going to figure out how much gas it's going to take and how much money it's going to cost for the gas and the food, and they're going to do some kind of math part of that, write up a narrative of 2 of the places they visited, you know, and so you tell this plan to the teacher, and the teacher's like, yeah, that sounds great, just add division, because they're really working on division right now. Great. So you make a plan, you go online, you go to current families on our website, you go to absence waivers, you type it up, and you submit it. And then the teacher gets it, and then they can sign off on it, and the absence goes away from their attendance. So you have to do it in a timely manner, plan before, return it within 2 weeks. Okay? So, you know, we do all of our snow days are done that way, so we communicate work to kids, and kids create plans with families, depending on the age level. And you don't have to do an absence waiver for that day, but we do virtual learning on snow days as well. And so if you're dropping them off at aunt's house or grandparents' house, just remember that part of the process. You might want to go online in the morning and make sure you communicate that to whoever's supporting them on that day. We send a lot of emails because we love you. And we really want this to be a very integrated approach to learning. And the only way we know to do that is to communicate consistently. And so to let you know what's going on and to share things. And it's hard. I get it. I get everyone's emails in this building. And so 19 of them, I don't read thoroughly every single one each week, but I read thoroughly every single studio every other week, right? So, you know, you might have 4 or 5 kids in 5 different studios. It's a lot, you know? And so you may want to make some time, plan to do that, just so that you can be really consistent. Because I will tell you, that's the #1 thing new families say, is they've missed something and they hated it. And so, because you start to see so many things coming from us. If you haven't opted in, I don't have that on here. Do you know what I mean by opting into our emergency communication system? So most of you are shaking your head. If you haven't done that yet, on those cupola notes, there's information about that, how to opt in. And so if there's ever an emergency situation at the school, we will communicate that to you. So last year we had what we called it Watergeddon. We had toilets coming up with water throughout the, you know, that part of the building. And so we had to dismiss early because we had to shut off all the water, and we had to get experts in here to fix the problem. So please make sure that you're on that system so you know that part too. So multi-age environments, most of you know that now, but those are all very purposeful. So sometimes families will say, well, my child's 6, can they go in the 3-6 program or the 6-9, or they move during the year, and they stay in the same environment throughout the year. And so sometimes children move up early, most of the time they just move with their development. Because they're in that room for 3 years, there's materials up to 3rd grade in the early childhood environments. So you don't have to worry about them knowing everything. Each one of those materials has like 10 different lessons that goes with them. You know, in the teens program, kids can graduate early. You know, and we have, I think, 4 that graduated early last year, and I think 3 that are graduating early this year. So there really isn't a reason for that to worry about that. But those multi-age environments, that's what's so powerful about them. So bring lunches, most of you know this process already. Maybe you've had a note sent home from the teacher about 1 small dessert, or that we don't bring highly sugary drinks and that kind of thing. So just, you know, if you're not sure about that, read back over in the handbook. You read as a family, let your child read it to you if they can read yet, and then you can talk through. We really encourage you to give them money to go to budget for it. At the time our children were 6 to 9-year-olds, they were making their lunches every day. They went shopping for their lunches every week. They are capable of doing that. That's developmentally purposeful independence. And so you go and you say, so you know, you you can have one Lunchable a month, or whatever your parameter wants to be. You know, and so they can figure out what vegetables, what fruits, you can set whatever parameters you want on that, and whatever your small dessert's gonna be. And so then they have that ownership in that food. And then they bring back what they haven't eaten, so you can see what they're eating and what they're not eating too. Birthdays asked, every studio does it a little bit differently, but you know, usually studios do participate in birthdays. If your child does not participate in birthdays, just let the teacher know that and they won't do anything. Oftentimes you can come in for the birthdays, especially in the 3 to 9, 3 to 12 program. So just, you know, ask your teachers about that if there's a birthday coming up. We ask that you don't distribute birthday cards or birthday invitations at school for obvious reasons, but you all got the studio emails and communication, so you can do that in that way. For your child if you want to do that. So prepared environments, they're all very different. We really encourage families to sub. The number one thing, and Jim would agree, that helps you to be a consistent parent at the school is to be in the building. And some of you are like, well, I work, I can't sub, but there might be times and places that you can volunteer. And so we really encourage you to come back on September 3rd for the Parent Volunteer Workshop. And so as you get to know these environments, you'll get more comfortable. You won't be like, I don't know what's going on there. You just see it. You know, there's no way to explain it until you really see it. And so Jen's over there shaking her head. Drop off and pick up. So you're kind of working through that process now. And so if you do have siblings you don't have a plan yet with, just remember you have to pick them up at their time too. If you have a plan with them with the teacher, then you can have that plan, but otherwise, you know, and parents are like, what do I do for that 15 minutes in between? You talk with your child. You can go sit by the pond. You can go back in the back 4 acres and take a walk. Like, you've got options. You can go inside the alcove if you want. But we really encourage that family time together. So attendance, so if a child's late, except for early ed, we ask them to come up and give them one step before they go back to the studio. And so, you know, that just helps us to track. We do ask for the child to write it when they can, so please let them develop mentally purposeful independence. Write what they can, and then you can fill in for that, as well as, so then they'll get a little blue ticket that they take to their studio as well. We really encourage that your child stays with the adults when they're outside. If they're out walking or playing in Marie's way, that you're out there with them. We try to encourage you not to idle your car when you're waiting, and so we try to turn it off for our environment. 10-minute commitments, so a lot of times families have questions about that. How do I do that? How do I do the 10 minutes of commitment? So if you have a 17-year-old, it's probably going to look different than if you have a 3-year-old, right? And so that 3-year-old, you might come in and observe 10 minutes, you know, after a drop-off or before pickup at the observation window. That's the way to observe in 3 to 6. In 6 to 12, you know, oftentimes family comes in before school or after school. It's usually after school unless you have a plan with the teachers for before school. And just let them show you. Show me something. You know, what is it that you know in this area of the room that you could show me about? And so then they get out the division board and you're like blown away, right? And so don't worry about correcting them. If you have questions about it, ask the teacher. Just be in a moment with them. Let them share with you something that's new. When something's new, it's not always accurate, you know? So let them just be them for you, and then you can follow up with teachers with any questions you have. Down here it might look like, you know, these guys all get advisory notes each week. And so you're pulling up their advisory notes and you're talking to them about, so tell me about the world language. It says that you owe, you know, 92 Duolingo things on it. What does this mean? You know? And so you're like, oh yeah, I do have to do that. And, oh wait, I already turned all that in. I'm all finished with all that. Oh, really? It shows it all still on here. And it's just email your advising and copy me. Well wait, maybe I didn't do it. Right? So it's that, you know, trust but verify process. That's your 10 minutes usually with the team, is to do that conversation piece with them about where they are with their work. You're not trying to be a helicopter parent, but you're trying to trust but verify. And so oftentimes that includes having them email their studio teachers and copying you. That's an independence that's appropriate, purposeful, and developmental, and it doesn't have you doing that work for them. Well, I've emailed their teachers 3 times, and I've asked for this and that. Like, have your child do that. They are capable in the TEAMS program of doing it. Discipline versus interdiscipline, so we talked about that piece. So these are just some reminders. We have parent-partner conferences, obviously, this week. So if you haven't signed up for that, do so, which is great. And then again, November, February, and May. So it's all on the calendar if you want to figure out work schedules or so forth. They're really important times. It is a collaborative event. You'll be a part of that. Your child will be a part of that for elementary and up. and the teachers will be a part of that. So it's not the traditional, teacher tells you what's good and bad, and then you walk away. So it's a collaborative conversation. Child's Work Night for early ed and elementary is October 24th. And so that's a time for you just to come in and be present with your child. Let them show you what they've learned. And so just be there and be present with them. And then if you're like, I have no idea what they just did, go over and talk to the teacher privately. So tell me what that was. It's not a time for you to take control, it's for time for them to be in control and for them to share things with you. I'll never forget one year this parent came in and this child was doing the Tower of Cubes or Pink Towers. Anyone ever seen that before? So it's the largest cube, the smallest. And so the child, as part of the environment, took the first cube, they already laid a rug out, and walked across the room, put the first cube down, and went back and forth, and the parent was like, oh my gosh, it's going to take all day. They loaded their shirt up with all the cubes, and they walked over and threw it out, and of course the child was looking there, because the work is the movement as much as it is the creation. And so you won't always know that, and we are constantly learning. I learn every single day for child disability. There's never a day that goes by. And so if you're not sure, just ask the adults. So is this what they're supposed to do? Is this supposed to take like 20 minutes? Watch their focus, watch their concentration, look what they're doing, And so just be present. So it's a time for you to slow down from life and just be present in that moment with them. Read emails, read the family handbook. We talked about the blog, study the Montessori method. So I've got lots of books just up there. Some of them are written by Marie Montessori, others are written by other people that are either consistent with the Montessori method. So this one by Paula Willard, Montessori in the Classroom, The Sensory Sensitive Child, Montessori, The Science Behind the Genius. So it's like the research behind the Montessori. This is the other book by Dr. Shivali Sabari. Oftentimes parents will say to me, well, which book should I get? And I'll ask you like 9 questions afterwards. What are you trying to do? Are you trying to learn about the philosophy? Do you like really heady books? Absorbent Child, The Secret of Childhood, were written by Marie Montessori. They're not an easy read for most adults, right? Because they were written in the mid-1900s. But then there's books like Montessori Madness, which is checked out right now, which is written by Trevor Eisler, who's a parent. And so he puts it into lay terms, and so it's an easier read for some families who don't want to be like, oh my gosh, that sentence, I'm going to have to think about that for 20 minutes, what that means. They're both great, but they're different purposes. I always recommend for parents that are figuring out how to talk to their child or how to be consistent at home, this book by Barbara Coloroso called Kids Are Worth It. And so it really talks about, how do we talk to children, and we have books like How to Talk to Children, so that children can see. How to talk to kids so the kids will listen. Yeah, and how to talk to teens. Yeah, that's right, yeah. So we've got those books too, so it just depends on what you're after. This is 100 child development tips, insights, and suggestions from Montessori teachers. I just found this in my book place today. I remember ordering it now, but I was like, I forgot all about it. It's a really powerful book, and so it's got some nice little tidbits. From childhood to adolescence, it's a Montessori book. The Tao of Montessori, and we talked about the absorbed mind. So I'm going to pass out a few things to you. This is a communication hints. I'll take half those off on this side. Thank you. Yeah. And then talking respectfully to your child. So here's some takeaway for you. And keep going, Evan. So talking about, who's heard of the Casa de Curiosity? A few of you? Okay. So we are expanding our building this next year. So the staff got together, I guess it's been 4 years ago, and we came up with what our wish lists were. We had refinanced our current building, and so we had a little bit more money. And so we created a committee called Prioritizing the Moolah. And so this committee came up with what are some things that we want to do as a school. And so one of them was we do a lot of where kids do exhibitions like on projects that they did in the elementary program and exhibitions on projects and things they learned in the teens program. And so those things happen. We also have a lot of theater projects that happen. And so we're building a new building called the Casa de Curiosity. So Marie Montessori's first school was called the Casa de Bambini, which is for 3 to 6-year-olds. And so this is the House of Curiosity. And so the plans are right behind Jen over there if you want to look at them before you leave. The bottom part is the main building, the main what's it called, diagram. And the second space above there is for a little crow's nest that is on top of the concession area. And so we're really excited about that. We've been fundraising for that. We still have a little more fundraising to do for some of the projects like for the sound and lighting and the furniture that's going to be in there. And so that is going to be where the old teen parking lot was, which is on the other side of the building over here. And so we'll start breaking ground on that right after fall break in October. So that's really exciting. And so if you want to go look at that, you can. I think there's another slide there. Yeah, this doesn't really look like what the building looks like, but it was the original look like of the building. Wayne Estopino, who died last year, some of you know who the architect was the architect of the project. So we've changed some of the design of that, but there are some overhead doors. This is mostly going to be steel and the stone that we have on the main building, and so it'll have its own entrance. And so it'll be a place for, like these kinds of meetings and community meetings, and as well as these theater projects and exhibitions. So we're real excited about that. So we hope that will be finished sometime in spring or summer. And keep going there. Melissa Wiesing here, who I shared with you, and see there's Evan. He was a teen at school. Who sits up next to Kelly in the cupola. You can always reach out to her. We have had lots of family support, and Martin's done a lot of support to this project over the years, the theater project. And so if you'd like to contribute to this, ways to make contribution is a paver. So there's some paper forms up here. So if you see Maria's wave with people's names on it, you're like, how do I do that? Here's how. So right now, I think we have about $75,000 that we're raising for the internal equipment of the project. And we give online via PayPal. And then we're doing a Give for Good project on September 12th, which is a community event. And that's another way. Sometimes those get matched locally by sponsors as well. Any questions about La Casa? So this is just, sorry, you're good. This is just kind of a reminder list for you. And I want to give you the time to ask questions. We talked about a lot of things. And seeing what your thoughts are. Got something? Nothing? I covered all of it.
There's a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
For son's second year.
Okay. Yeah. Yes.
If I remember correctly, you said for the partner conferences, is that correct?
EPCs, I know we do a lot of acronyms too.
Children or no children? And I'm talking about 3-year-olds.
Usually not a 3-year-old, I would ask your teacher. It's hard for them to sit, in adult conversation. And so elementary and up, everybody comes, but for early childhood, kinder, yeah.
Okay, makes sense. And they are off both days.
They are off both days, yeah. But you coming is their attendance for both days.
So do they sign us up for this, or is this something I should have signed up as far as the conference?
Yeah, so in their emails, they should have shared how they're communicating. Some do it like you sign up Genius, is that right? Or Genius. Where you can sign up online. Others have paper set up outside their studios or.
Okay, I'll go look.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Did you have something? Yes, I'm sorry.
Does this count as volunteer hours?
It does. And so you go right again to current families on their website and log your volunteer hours. Yeah. Did you have something to do? You were just telling me to listener.
If someone wanted to attend the substitute volunteer workshop, then they can, with my parents.
Yeah.
Is there any other
So we videotape it like this one.
Okay.
So you can watch the video and you'll get the answers to the questions in the video that you fill out the form. And then that form you turn in to the curb desk and we do a background check and that gets you legal for the substitute process here, volunteer. What else? I had a lot of questions there. I moved into CASA right after discipline. Nothing you want to go back to there? Everyone got that because we're going to do a quiz in just a minute. Kidding, there's no quiz. There's one more slide there. Oh, just anything else? I'll be around for a bit. Feel free to look at the plans up there, get a donation paper if you like, and thank you so much for coming and thanks for being a part of our community.